Hello viewers, Super GT here. It's been a while, but I'm finally back. I'm going to be tackling this week's Daily Race C, Deep Forest, Group 3. This is the meta car for the week, so let's give it a go, shall we? Okay, here we go. Now, I apologise for having 2 weeks off of YouTube, but I had COVID after going to the Amsterdam Gran Turismo World Series event, and then I had a very bad injury on my ankle, and it's only just recovered, so I can just about press the brake pedal. First race here with minimal practice in top split. This probably will end badly, but let's see what we can do. And at the end of this race, I'm going to do a giveaway for a FANATEC DD Pro, so stick around for that. So yes, when I was at the Amsterdam GT World Series, I was lucky enough to get onto the podium for the Pro-Am race, and the prize for that was a FANATEC DD Pro, the Gran Turismo one. And I don't need one, so I'm going to give it away to my lovely audience, so please do check out that. Now, into this race, starting 15th out of 16, decided to not qualify, to just try to jump in, and let's learn the race for this first one, as in the strategy, and kind of just the pace you have to drive at for this first time. Now, as I said, it's a top split race, so lots of very fast players here. And therefore, for my first race back in 2 or 3 weeks, this probably wouldn't be easy. I would have to kind of recollect my skills on this game quite quickly. Otherwise, I would be getting left behind in the dust. Now, onto the back straight here. This is always a difficult track in terms of track limits. And as you can see, a car up in front with the infamous 0.5 second penalty. And as we come up to the hairpin for the first time, 3 abreast up in front, and I've got the Frenchman on the inside, who I am not going to be able to defend against, and he goes through up to 15th. Now I'm dead last. Okay, sounds disastrous, but as I said, this is just a learning race, and as everyone else goes into the pit lane, I'm going to follow. Not knowing what the strategy was, I changed tyres as well. Well, we're just going to follow everyone else into the pits because I don't know what I'm doing. And that's pretty much the case in your first race. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what the strategy is. So I changed the tyres, and it turns out that was a massive mistake, because you don't actually have to. You do have to do a pit stop, but you don't necessarily have to change the tyres. So there I am, 5 seconds from the nearest car, which is basically eternity. Now by lap 7, as you can see, I had some vague hope of catching someone, and then I did catch someone, because that guy continued turning left on a straight and went flying into barrier. At the end of all of that though, it was only good enough for 13th. There we go, 13th in the end. Pace wasn't too bad, so I'm quite hopeful for the second race. As I said, there's going to be a giveaway, which is right now. I'm giving away one of these, the FANATEC DD Pro. There is a link in the description if you want to enter. You've got 1 week, good luck. So let's take a look at the replay. Obviously, I made the mistake of changing tyres when you don't actually have to do that. You do have to make a pit stop. But let's take a look at my pace. So for the most part, I was in the 26s, low 26s to the mid 26s. So Levicious, who won the race, was in the 25s at the beginning, then towards low 26s. So let's go again, starting at the back, but this time with the correct strategy. Okay, let's do this. Let's get this right. Once again, starting at the back of the pack, 15th out of 16. Again, now this went wrong quite quickly, as the Frenchman behind went for a little bit of an audacious move, kind of just moving me aside on turn 1. So there I was, immediately down to 16th. At the end of the lap, towards the hairpin, and the hairpin is always a bit of a choke point here at Deep Forest. It has a very weird design. The gravity feels weird to me. I don't know how to describe it. It just is a weird corner. I almost murder Damien in front there, having to take evasive action, coming back for a late apex, and actually getting a move done here on the McLaren. Now up into 15th. And a couple of cars going in early, so you can do that pit stop pretty much at any point in the race, just I guess as a tactical element of when do you want to get some clear air. And a little bit later on, this is the end of lap number 2 now. I'm in 8th, courtesy of those cars pitting. And this was actually a decent lap here, catching up with this group in front, who I had kind of lost touch with at the beginning of the lap, but managed to hook it all up as the Frenchman goes into the pit lane, just trying to hang to the right here to go back to the left onto the main straight, and that should be good enough for another overtake and the fastest lap of the race there. So 25.7, pretty happy with that as we head into turn 1, up into 4th place, mainly because most people have pitted, but this race definitely going better than before. And end of lap number 4 now, catching up with this battle for second as we head towards the hairpin. The guy in second there actually serving a penalty, and so as we head into the apex, looking around the outside, it's not quite going to happen there, so we do have to tuck in behind. And I suppose this is the tactical element of this race. When you're behind someone like this, I mean, you could slipstream him past, but I decided, you know what, let's go into the pit lane and not change the tyres this time around, and not make that mistake twice in a row. So once again, the pit lane is really just a tactical element of the race, just making sure you avoid traffic. I mean, I could have stayed out there and just tried to overtake him on the track, but deciding not to. Now, we met our good friend here who we had a rendezvous with on lap 1, and what a shame I accidentally made contact with him there on turn 1. I mean, a bit heavy-handed, must be said. But a bit further on into the race, I was 14th, so it seemed like I really just wasn't making much progress. My pace was still in the 26s that lap, in the 28, so quite a slow lap. Coming out here just behind the McLaren, and I was thinking, you know, where's this race gone? I'm down here in 13th. The pace isn't quite good enough. I did manage to get past this McLaren on the main straight with the 4GT superior top speed, giving it the legs to go past quite easily. A little bit later on here, Levicius, the South African driver, with a penalty and presumably some mistake earlier in the race, bringing him back into my clutches as he was on the podium paying positions earlier on. But now we can have a battle to try to get into the top 10. I mean, we did start 15th. This is quite a high quality lobby, and therefore, you know, gaining 5 positions wouldn't be too bad. Actually, I am in 10th now, and to my surprise, he decided to not defend the position, and so this should be quite a easy move. Let's just make sure we don't overcook it. We do overcook it slightly, but not enough that he can nip back up the inside on the way out. Almost did, but not quite enough there. And so moving up into 9th position. And so this would pretty much be the battle to the end of the race. The guy in 8th there, 1.9, nearly 2 seconds in front. And so unlikely that we're going to be able to reel that gap in with a lap and a half to go. And Deep Forest is one of those tracks where it's actually quite difficult to pull away from a car behind, mainly because you have these very long straights here. 2 very long straights, one of them starting now on the build up towards the hairpin. So if anyone's within slipstream range, they're going to be gaining quite a lot on you every time. And so with less than half a second between me and Levicius, I'm not really going to be able to pull away. And I was also quite weak through this hairpin. I would say it's one of my worst corners on this track. It's one of my least favourite corners in the game. I just can't ever seem to quite get it right. Moving my brake bias slightly forward as I head it towards the back to protect the rear tyres, but it looks like my rear right is actually really rather worn out. And so with 1 lap to go, I decided to try to protect that rear tyre. As we cross the line, just deciding if he's close enough to go for that move, and seeing as it's the final lap, I might as well go defensive, given that there's no real positions to fight for going forwards. It's all about defending and keeping position by this point in the race on the final lap. Onto the back straight for the final time, and this is always quite a nervy moment in the race because of course there's the hairpin where they can overtake you, but also they can drag past you before the run up to the finish line. There's quite a long distance between this corner and the finish, and therefore there's always the opportunity to get beaten just on the finish line in a drag race. And I really make an absolute mess of that corner, which brings Levicius into contention here. So I'm just trying to break the toe any way I can, just to make sure that he cannot get this overtake done. And as we come up to the line, it seems though I've just done enough. It was quite close, but it was a good battle, and it's going to be a 9th place. That is a hard-fought race. Really close in that mid-pack. It's really hard to break into that mid-pack if you're starting at the back. I think we're going to have to qualify. You're looking at the lap times, 24.2, fastest in the world. I think if I get a high 24 or a low 25, I'll be in the mid-pack or towards the front-ish, so that's where I need to be. Okay, so jumping in. Now, given that I've done 2 races already, I roughly knew what to do. So my first lap was a 25.5, and that was just based on what I was doing in the race. But I know that I could definitely go, let's say about half a second quicker than that, towards the high 24s, low 25s. So let's see what we can do here. This is the second lap, and it's pretty much a case of just correcting the mistakes from your fastest lap. And as you can see, they're gaining quite a lot of time at the hairpin. As I've mentioned many times, one of my worst corners on the entire track. So that was an improvement to a 25.4. And how about this lap? Just cutting the track there. It's actually quite an innocuous penalty, but you can get a penalty on that section of the track if you just stray beyond the white line. It is possible to do that. I mean, I crashed on that lap anyway, so that lap wasn't going to be a good one. But this is lap number 4 now. Let's see if we can get a good hairpin here and try to just chip away another 10th or 2. And we do. It's going to be an improvement to a 25.3. Still a couple of tenths to come off of that, I would say. So take a look at this. I was a 10.5 down compared to the Ghost. But this left-hander onto the back straight is such a crucial corner on this lap. And I managed to get it really quite a lot better than the Ghost. And you see there I gain a 10.5, maybe a bit more. And so I know that I can do a 25.1 if I can just connect the dots and put the lap together. Now, I did make a mess of the hairpin, so this lap wasn't quicker. But the fact that I went through that left-hander onto the back straight quite a lot faster, I know the improvement is there to be made. On this lap, just pushed a little bit too hard past the track limit, and we are gaining time, but we are going to gain a penalty, as you can see, so this lap won't count. But it just shows you what is possible. So on this lap, lap number 8, a little bit wide of the track limits, of the apex, sorry, but keeping within track limits. And so I was a 10th up on this occasion, and that managed to get me another improvement to a 25.2. So slowly chipping away until this lap here, where I managed to connect it all together. This is lap 15 of the time trial, so 20 minutes in now. I was quite consistent in the mid to low 25s, but I knew that I could do a 24 or at least a 25.0, and this is where we managed to do it. So this sector is really about carrying the speed through these corners, letting go of the brake at the right time and getting back on the power as early as you can. So I actually make a bit of a mess of the exit there and lose about a 10th, which was really frustrating. I was a 10th up in the first split, and then I pretty much lost it. But gaining it back through that left-hander, let's try and get a good line and exit through here, running quite wide. But you do have to do that to maximise the power onto this back straight. So I am 0.133 up, just over a 10th up into the final corner. Have to get this braking point right. There's a shadow going across the circuit just before the 100 board. And that's the place where I was braking. Let go of the brake, back on the power in second gear for traction. And it looks like that is going to be enough of an improvement. A 10.5. And it's not quite going to be enough to get a 24. But I was quite happy with this lap. It's going to be a 25.0. 25.0. Happy with that. The 209th in the world, which is okay. Let's see where it puts me on the grid for race number 3. Alright, 3rd on the grid. This could be good. This could be good. And trust me guys, this race is really good. This is one you want to watch. So 3rd on the grid, 12 laps, Deep Forest, Group 3 cars. I'm in the full GT. Let's see what we can do. Up towards the front of the pack. And this race was this was a really good race, I must say. This combination, Group 3, 12 laps. Given the races I did, the results were always very close. It was always a very hard fought race. One where people were fairly well balanced from the front of the pack to the back of the pack. And so you really did have to concentrate and be on your A game for this race. and that's always good. That's what I do like about Gran Turismo. Yeah, you know, jumping on after a couple of weeks away and just being at sharp end, having a good race, having a good battle with a couple of people. And here we're behind Heaton 93, just beginning to lose touch slightly with the leader, and so I decided let's bump draft him down the straight here. And given that I was so close, I thought let's move to the inside, just to make sure I don't go into the back of him on the brakes. But actually it turned out to be a decent move here into the hairpin, getting into the apex. It does feel quite clumsy in this car, in the Ford GT, those slow corners. And here, I wanted to follow the slipstream of the guy in front, but I'll be honest, he absolutely faked me out there. So I went into the pit lane and went for an early stop. You see there, just faked to the left, and I was trying to follow him, and then I thought he was going in the pit lane, so he absolutely got me there. But not to worry, we are here in clear air with Heaton just behind, so he followed me in. And it's really a case of just trying to settle into a rhythm and set some good consistent laps. Now it would have been better to stay out and follow the Spaniard in second place, and you know, I would have had the slipstream, I could have put him under pressure. Now it's a direct battle in terms of pace, and I don't have any slipstream, so I'm going to have to do all the work myself here. With Heaton behind as well, I do have someone to worry about and no slipstream to assist me from the front, so this could get tricky. Let's take a look at the gap here. This is very important. The gap to the leader, 12.8 seconds. So ideally, I need that gap to come down. And then there's a chance that I could jump this guy in the pit stops. And that's pretty much what this race equates to right now. Get that gap down to, let's say, 11 point something. And I probably will jump into the lead. But if I don't manage to do that, then who knows? I could be second still. Could be third, could be fourth. Could be lower down, depends how quick these people go. So perhaps pitting early wasn't the best idea, but we are going to continue and make the most of what we've got here. So beginning of lap number 2, Heaton in very close contention, so I had to be pretty much on it the entire time. And this is the end of lap number 3 now, and this is the first point where I felt like I'm actually going to have to maybe defend here. As I mentioned earlier, there's 2 very long straights here, and this gives the car behind a long opportunity to stay behind and gain with the slipstream. And so on this occasion I decided I'm going to move to the racing line and not defend. You see just how close Heaton gets, very close indeed, but not quite close enough to really force the issue and go for that move. It would have been a bit of a dive bomb from that far back. Gap goes up to 13.2, so we've lost about half a second in a couple of laps, which is not ideal. It needed to go the other way. I needed to be the one gaining half a second rather than losing it. And so it's going the wrong way at the moment, but we are still holding position. One worry I do have as well is that of traffic. You see a car in front, which could potentially slow us down. So a 25.8, that's 225.8 in a row, so good consistency in the 25s. We could be getting towards the mid or lower 25s ideally, but that sort of pace is not too bad. Now on this lap, the Spaniard actually gave me a bit of a chance here because he cut one of the corners in the first sector and got himself a 1 second penalty, having to serve it later that lap. And therefore, when I later came through to the penalty zone, the gap came down from 13.6 or 7 down to a 12.3. So I suddenly gained, and we're back towards that 11 point something area that I need to get that gap down to. So this was getting really rather interesting. This is the end of lap number 6, so coming up to halfway into this race, and my consistency wasn't quite as good as I would have liked, and this time around Heaton was as close as he had ever been, and so I think this would be quite a difficult defence. In fact, I wouldn't really be able to go into the first corner without defending. I definitely had to defend this one, moving to the left and then forcing back to the right. So yes, I keep the position, but just losing a bit of time. You lose a couple of tenths every time you do that, so that gap comes back to about 12.7 by this point, with Heaton still pretty much keeping the heat on from behind. So it was a good battle between the two of us, but it was one of those where it wasn't really helping us at the same time. So it's quite a weird situation to be in when you're racing someone directly behind, but also racing someone indirectly at the front of the pack, trying to beat them on pace. And this was actually quite a good challenge. It was a bit of a different scenario compared to what you usually come up to. But this is the end of lap number 7 now. The pace was okay. A couple of low 26s there in the last couple of laps, as a couple of cars go into the pit lane now. And so we're going to start gaining some of these positions back that we lost earlier on when we pitted. This lap's going to be a 25.9, so good pace. Heaton there, very close once again, but I didn't go defensive. It wasn't quite there, wasn't quite close enough to go for that move. And so we just take the normal racing line. End of lap number 8 now. We gained 4th place from the Spaniard there serving a penalty. And then we gained 3rd courtesy of Kilian, a former world champion of Gran Turismo, going to the pit lane. I had to go defensive here, and there's a yellow flag quite interestingly as we go in towards the first corner. So I'm up into 3rd place, and all of a sudden I'm going to start gaining on the Spaniard in front, the leader, or the de facto leader of the race. We've got Stefanzi there in the lead of the race, but that guy has yet to pit, and therefore isn't really going to feature in this battle for the race victory. And I was very confused at this point of the race because I was suddenly catching the Spaniard who I was battling on lap 1, and I couldn't quite piece it together. I thought he'd pitted, but come to think of it, the yellow flag towards turn 1 explains it, and that explains why he's come back so close to me now, and that we are now actually going to get embroiled in a battle once again. As he serves a penalty, this now therefore turns this race, well, I mean, this is the battle for the lead now, as we go actually down the inside, looking for the race lead, or 2nd place, which is effectively the race lead. And now we're going to be side by side coming down the hill. So this is going to be an incredible battle now, all of a sudden. Out of nowhere, the Spaniard has made loads of mistakes, and now we're fully in contention for the race victory. And it's actually going to be 3 abreast temporarily here down the main straight as we head towards turn 1. Heaton into the lead temporarily, but we're going to make sure we go really narrow here to make sure we do not get old switcherooed on the exit. And we've done the job. Up into 2nd place, effectively the lead, once Stefanzi pits. So this suddenly turned on its head, this race. I really did not expect to be this close to the Spaniard. I thought his pace was far too good for me, as he was actually gapping me quite comfortably, even with that 1-second penalty he had to serve. I mean, I'll show you what happened to him at the end of the race. But this was very interesting for me. And so we're in contention for a race victory. And I'm not complaining too much. After a couple of weeks away, yes, I started in 3rd, but to be towards the front and winning a race, this is obviously a good position to be in. I mean, I'm not winning the race, I've said this many times. I'm in 2nd, but effectively in the lead. And this was actually good news for me here, because the Spaniards started battling with Heaton, and they just began to drop slightly, and that was crucial for me. But check out Kilian, in 5th place here, former world champion, and this is a common feature in higher split lobbies these days. You're gonna witness very elite level players starting towards the back. But that doesn't mean you should forget about them. They're going to be able to come through the pack and feature towards the front of the result sheet. And therefore, this race is by no means over. With someone of Kilian's speed, even though I am nearly 2 seconds in front, or 1.5 seconds in front here, this is by no means over. And so I have to really drive as quickly as I can for the remaining 1.5 laps. Heaton here actually helping out indirectly by going slightly defensive there. Massive moment for Kilian on the exit of the tunnel, but he's really just waiting for this opportunity to go past. Meanwhile, at the front, just trying to keep my cool and maintain this gap. Make sure we do not get a penalty at this point in the race. A penalty now would be absolutely catastrophic and would not be helpful in any way, shape or form. So heading towards the hairpin at the end of lap number 11, side by side between Heaton and Kilian. Look at this move. down into first gear, gets the rotation, and manages to pull off a quite simply sublime move around the outside. Not many times you're going to see that. That was a really, really tidy move there by Killian. And with Stefunzi into the pit lane, I am in the lead now of the race with 1 lap left to go. 3 abreast once again between the guys behind. And watch this move by Killian. This was incredible. In 4th place going in, threads the needle between the two of them. Bit of contact, but it's not too bad. And keeps the throttle planted around the outside, and boom, back to 2nd. Absolutely amazing driving here. As he goes around the outside of Heaton, and then around the outside of Calster, and yeah, just brilliant racing between the two of them, or between the 3 of them. And now it's a very simple scenario. Try to hold on for half a lap. We know that Killian's coming. He's very, very quick indeed. One of the quickest, or if not the quickest player who actually plays daily races at this point in time. And therefore this is not over. If he gets close into this hairpin, he might not be able to go for the move into the hairpin, but definitely could slipstream past before the finish line if I don't get this hairpin dead right. So let's go in looking for our braking marker just before that shadow on the ground, taking it nice and easy, and we've done it. We've got the calmness, the coolness to get the job done, and we're going to hold off the former world champion and come back to winning ways. It's been an honour to do this for you, ladies and gentlemen. Get in there, Lewis. Miracles do happen, mate. Woo, what a race. Miracles do indeed happen, guys. And that was one of them right there. And for those wondering what happened to the Spaniard, well, take a look. So he was quite comfortable in the lead with very good pace. But on lap number 9, just pushed a little bit too hard and sent spinning into barrier, getting an innocuous 1.5 second penalty just to cap it off as well. So with some damage, he had to limp around for this lap, serve the penalty at the end of lap number 9, and then this is where I managed to dive up the inside. And even though we were fighting directly here, he was effectively out of the race because he was yet to do his pit stop. But this was really good battling between the 3 of us, side by side down the straight. Really, really good stuff. And I have to say, Polyphony did a really good job with this race. It was really, really fun racing it. And I hope to see some of you in the lobby during the week. Okay, remember there's a DD Pro giveaway. That was an amazing race. Great to be back in Gran Turismo. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe, like, all of that good stuff. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.